This is one of those cars that you have to buy when you're told to be sensible with your money. You're looking at the i30 sedan, and this one's the premium model, and there's a bunch of different ways you can have your i30 sedan. You can either have it as a base model with no options, you can have it a hybrid motor, you can have this 2-liter naturally aspirated motor, you can get the ridiculously powerful i30 sedan N, which is epic, also known as the Elantra N, or if you can't afford that, you can get the N line, which comes with a slightly less powerful 1.6-liter turbocharged motor. Now, the two other options you could consider are the Toyota Corolla sedan and also the Mazda 3 sedan, both very sensible alternatives to this car. But to help in your decision-making process, make sure you visit productreview.com.au, because there you're going to be able to read reviews of people who've actually bought and lived with cars like the i30 sedan, the Mazda 3, and the Toyota Corolla. And you can even review your own car there as well. Now, this i30 sedan is going to cost you $38,500 before on-road costs, so it's easily going to be over $40,000 drive away when you go to pick up the keys to one of these. So why would you get the premium version of the i30 sedan? You get these LED headlights up front, you're getting 19-inch wheels wrapped in a Kumho tire, you get a sunroof, you get an LED taillight design, but you still get halogen indicators, you get rear autonomous emergency braking, you get a 360-degree parking camera system, and also a blind spot camera when you turn on your indicators. You get a 10-way power adjustable seat for the driver, and you also get 2 memory functions for this seat. But the passenger seat is still manually operated. You get a Bose speaker system. You get heated and ventilated front seats wrapped in a leather material, and you've also got a heated steering wheel. Now, what makes this the new i30 sedan? Well, not a whole bunch. It gets a slightly new exterior and some new bits on the interior. But that's really about it. What I do find a bit peculiar, and I'm not the first person to point this out, are the panel gaps here. The gaps between the actual bonnet and everything else is just looking a bit wonky and not very flush. It's a bit of a shame about those panel gaps, because I personally think the i30 sedan is the second nicest looking small to medium sized sedan in this segment. It's definitely a lot more interesting than the Toyota Corolla sedan, but I do kind of prefer the look of the Mazda 3 just a little bit more. But for many, you might prefer the look of this. But perhaps the biggest change is under here. Well, first of all, if you're looking for the most powerful engine in the i30 sedan, this is not it. If you're looking for the most efficient motor, this is not it. If you're looking for the more reliable and one of the cheapest to maintain engines, this is it. You only have to service this thing every 12 months or every 15,000 kilometers, and your prepaid service packages are actually pretty affordable. For 3 years and 45,000 kilometers of coverage, you're looking at just $975. If you're looking for 4 years of coverage and 60,000 kilometers, you're looking at just $1,300. And over 5 years and 75,000 kilometers, you're looking at just $1,625 you have to budget over 5 years to service this thing. But perhaps the biggest news is that this is not paired up to a 6-speed automatic transmission anymore. Instead, it's paired up to a far more economical and more sensible CVT gearbox. And this thing still only produces 110 kilowatts and 185 newton meters of torque. And since this lacks any complicated turbochargers or electrical hybrid systems, this should be pretty reliable for the long term. But of course, you should always visit productreview.com.au to check to see if owners have actually enjoyed owning this car with this engine. Now, of course, this is the i30 sedan, not the hatchback, so you get a trunk style opening instead of a hatchback boot opening. The headlines here is you get 474 liters of boot space, which, yes, is quite a lot for a smaller sedan like this. You get a full-size spare tire underneath, which is very good, and you've also got these little pull tabs here to fold the seats down in a 60-40 split if you want to put long items through and you don't want to be bothered to open the side doors. Instead, you can pull these tabs here. And if your hands are full and you walk up to the back of your i30 sedan and you have this premium model here, the car will detect that the key is at the back of the car and automatically pop the boot open after 5 seconds, and it'll let you know by beeping the hazards and an external sound for 5 seconds, and then it will pop the trunk. But there's good reason why you would buy an i30 sedan and why these are pretty popular with rideshare drivers. Check out the space I have in the back. It's definitely more than the hatchback, and I feel far more comfortable back here. You get a center armrest with 2 cup holders here. You do get 2 USB ports here, which are USB Type-C ports, and they're also illuminated, which makes finding them at night a lot easier. You have 2 air vents back here, which is a big plus, and you've also got some netting back here, but you only have netting on the passenger side, not in front of the driver, which is really odd. You have okay amounts of feet room, but you have plenty of feet space, and you also get plenty of knee room and also an okay amount of headroom, but at 5'11", 6'11", I'm already getting pretty close to the headliner, so that could be a bit of a trouble spot for people who are over 6 foot. Storage in the back kind of sucks. There's only a small door bin here, and there's this tiny little pocket here in the door handle, and also there's lots of scratchy plastics back here, so it definitely feels a bit more affordable here, although there is a nice bit of soft material here around the door handle. And the middle seat is an okay seat to have, but this transmission and exhaust tunnel does make my feet space a bit limited. Now, what's changed on the interior? Not a whole bunch. You're still getting things like stitching on the door, these Mercedes looking speaker grills on the doors. You get these really comfortable seats which have great bolstering and great cushioning. We get two 10.25-inch displays. The driver's display is a little bit customizable, but not a whole bunch, but it still gives you vital information like your tire pressures and your car and trip information, and you can also change the dials to look a little bit different. You've got a 10.25-inch display here for the infotainment, which has connected services, which is quite cool. That's included for 5 years. So that means you get things like the weather. You've also got a valet mode in here. You can go ahead and activate quiet mode, which then quiets the speakers in the back and just puts your speakers up front, which is kind of cool. And you also have connection to BlueLink, which are these buttons up here. So you can hit that if you need any roadside assistance, or you have an SOS button in case of an emergency. And also you can sync your phone up to here and control things like the locks, the climate controls, and check other vital information from your phone to your car. And if you want to put anything from your phone in terms of navigation into your car, you can do that wirelessly, which is kind of cool. So you can already have your navigation loaded up before you even get going. But talking about that, I don't think I would use that because I'm using Apple CarPlay most of the time. And you also have these cup holders which can get deeper. So if you pull this space out and switch it around, it will make for a deeper cup holder. And your key is also the new Hyundai key, which is in the shape of the letter H, like their logo. Look, my issue with this car is not the fact that it beeps you for going over the speed limit. It's the fact that it misreads speed signs, and it really does think in some cases that you are speeding well and above the speed limit that was posted inside the car park that you left. So it might think you're doing 60 in a 10-kilometer-an-hour zone, which isn't a real speed. And also it will misread school signs, for example, when schools are on school holidays, and you know for a fact that it is not a 40 zone for that period of time. It will think you're speeding in a school zone. So while it's a useful feature for some people who want to avoid a speeding ticket, for me, I think it's invasive, annoying, and should be something that should be disabled from a one-time off rather than having to go every time into this menu. Now, while this feature might be good for some people who don't want a speeding ticket, and like right now, you can see it's telling me it's an 80 zone, where in fact, it's actually a 60 zone we're driving through. I just wish Hyundai had engineered this to be a one-time off that you just disable and don't ever think about it again. But instead, they make you turn it off every time you start and turn off this car, which is super annoying. But one other thing is that this car does suffer from some phantom detection with the front parking sensors. When you're in bumper to bumper traffic, for some reason it thinks you're about to start parking, and it's not the fact that you're close to a car in front of you, it just gets a bit spooked that there's cars around it, and then it will start to go off and it will turn down your audio to let you know that you might be close to a car in front of you, even though you're not, and it hasn't gone off for a while, but for some reason it just decides to go off randomly, which is, yes, been kind of annoying, and I haven't been able to pinpoint what really triggers it. But let's talk about the good things. This motor, super low stress. This CVT transmission is actually a really good pairing with this motor because it keeps the revs nice and low until you need to accelerate, and then it will pin the revs in the right power band to give you the most efficient acceleration curve, which is very good. Let's talk about fuel consumption, because the claimed fuel consumption of this car is around 6.1 liters per 100 kilometers combined. I've been averaging around 8 to 9 liters per 100 kilometers with mostly city driving, but once I hit the highway, I saw where that figure can come from, because this gets very efficient on the highway, and I saw my consumption dropping quite rapidly. But when you're just driving around the city, you should expect figures around 8 to 9 liters per 100 kilometers with this 2-liter motor. The suspension, it's really comfortable. It's really plush. They've done a great job of local tuning for the suspension, and it's just something that's really pleasurable to drive around, and you really don't have to think about too much when you're driving in the i30 Sedan Premium. The radar cruise control works really well in here, as well as the active lane keep assist, which are major plus points, and that blind spot camera is great for a second look if you're not looking over your shoulder all the time, which has been very useful for city driving. Steering is very dead. It's just one of those floaty steering feels that you're going to get. You can stiffen up a little bit through sport mode, but I've never found the need to activate sport mode in this car because I just don't see the need in a car like this. If you want a sporty driving experience, you're better off getting something like the N-Line. And what was interesting is that even fully loaded with 4 passengers in this car and a bit of luggage, this car managed to drive around pretty effortlessly. It was low speeds and it was in the city, so I wasn't experiencing the full acceleration power of the i30 Sedan Premium. But I did note that it didn't really feel too strained, even though this motor produces not a lot of torque and not a lot of power, but you will have to be careful when you're driving on the freeway for making overtakes because it's not very rapid at all. But it definitely has enough pickup when you're driving around the city. Now, there's great visibility out of this car. I like that a lot. And also the brakes are really nice to modulate because they're not too stiff and they're not too spongy either. They just got this really pillowy feel to them, which makes it really easy to drive this car smooth. There's a bit of body lean in here thanks to the fact this has a fair amount of sponginess to the suspension, which is great for comfort, but when you're going through corners like this, you can feel it kind of start to understeer a little bit into a corner. And these tires aren't suitable for performance driving at all. So again, if you are looking for a bit more performance out of your i30 sedan, the N-Line or the N are gonna be your best option. But for something that's meant to be a comfortable commuter car, this is absolutely fine handling. But I do think that if you do want to have the most fuel efficient vehicle, you will have to get the hybrid. Now the hybrids get a 6-speed dual clutch automatic, and it should save a bit more fuel driving this around the city. But let's take this for a drive because this car has a different gearbox compared to the non-hybrid i30 sedans because this has a 6-speed dual clutch automatic. But you don't know what the best thing about this base model is that it comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is great because some of the top spec models don't have that yet. Something else is weird is that I've never used a hybrid that uses an actual physical key. So you put the key in, start it up, but the engine doesn't turn on, which is really weird to me. But the car is very obvious in letting you know that it's ready to drive. As you get going, you'll hear a faint whirring sound, and that's because this hybrid has a sound generator on the outside to let everyone know that there is a hybrid nearby because this thing is pretty quiet. And what I was really impressed with is that Hyundai have managed to make the petrol motor fairly quiet when it kicks in. It doesn't really create a disturbing presence in the cabin, and it's quick to turn on and off, which is really quite nice. So it doesn't linger around for longer than it's needed. Now this car does have an EV menu, which you can easily access through here to check out your hybrid information, see what the car's doing, what electric motor use you're using, and what your average fuel economy is, which is very useful. But here's the problem that I have with this 6-speed dual clutch is that I can really feel it engaging those gears, which can sometimes just take away from the experience that this is a smooth driving car. So as we take it from a set of lights, I really do feel that first, second gear change, and it just makes my head bobble around a little bit, which is just not my favorite thing. And I just think that could be easily a bit more refined, but it just feels like I'm feeling a bit too much gear change for my liking. Now, fun fact, this thing only weighs just over 1,300 kilograms, which isn't that much, which is great to see considering that this is carrying extra components compared to the normal petrol i30 sedan. And overall, it's a very pleasant, plush ride. That extra weight does not affect the handling at all. This thing is just so easy to cruise around in. These seats are very comfortable. This is a very comfortable sedan, and especially the fact this is a sedan, not a hybrid, means that the boot is sealed off from the rest of the cabin, so this feels like a relatively quiet ride. And so the simple answer to does this save fuel? The answer is it absolutely does. I've been averaging around 5.2 liters per 100 kilometers during my drive, and even seen figures lower than 5 liters per 100 kilometers, where the normal petrol sedan that I drove was seeing figures around 8 liters. And something else that's crazy is that the actual predicted range for this car when I picked it up with a full tank of fuel was over 800 kilometers, which is a great amount of fuel savings. And also the instant torque from that electric motor really helps with off-the-line acceleration compared to the normal petrol sedan. So quickly comparing this to the petrol sedan, it's a little bit quicker to drive, it's quieter to drive, and it's way better on fuel compared to that car, and it's still really comfortable, and it doesn't really compromise the driving experience all that much. The only compromise here is the 6-speed dual clutch automatic, which is a little bit lurchy when you're getting off the line, and I can really feel those gear changes compared to the CVT, which uses a single continuous gear, which is far smoother. So to summarize this car for you, 3 things I don't like about it would be that invasive speed sign recognition system, the fact that this engine can get a bit thirsty around town, and the external build quality could be better. But the 3 things I do like about it is the rear seat space if you're carrying around passengers, the fact that this is really comfortable to drive around day to day, and also it's pretty affordable to own and run. And of course you should check reviews from owners who have actually bought and lived with this car on productreview.com.au. My name's Cameron, I'll see you in the next one.